I am Dale Green, a professor of architecture and historic preservation at Morgan State University. The story of civil rights in the African American community is a rich and a long history, mostly starting in the early 1700s and with the arrival of Africans here in America. This year also marks the 400th anniversary of Africans' arrival to Jamestown. Our history is truly all around us. We have a remarkable history as people of color. I'm often reminded of a colleague at Harvard University, Professor Henry Louis Gates, and his most noted quote when he says, "Wherever you go in history, you will find that there were black people who made contributions, but their contributions have often been lost, their contributions have been obscured, and their contributions have been buried." But it is projects like the Lost Town Project and the story map that you will see that uncover and unexcavate a legacy of civil rights among the African American race and uncover these lost towns, which in essence are the stories that connect us to black recreation, such as our colored beaches. It connects us to black recreation, such as the black baseball fields. It connects us to the black churches, and it connects us to the black schools, and it connects us to so many aspects of our past. Too often, individuals are unaware of the rich history of the civil rights agenda. Too often, we've lost sight of those former terms, such as de jure, which was segregation by law, de facto, which was segregation by practice. Too often, this storied past is too far behind us, and yet today we have very little connections and relevance to these areas of our history. But it is projects like this that not only commemorate the rich history of the civil rights agenda, but it is projects like this that remind us of what African Americans achieved during an era in which Jim Crow reigned, during an era in which segregation by law reigned, and during eras where segregation by practice followed. And so these story maps help us to understand the tapestry in which African Americans moved, in which African Americans, against all the odds, were still the victors. I'm very honored to know my family's history. I'm very honored to have worked with a project like this that has uncovered the histories of many families throughout Anne Arundel County. And so it is during these eras of our history that our people, African American people, endured centuries of deprivation, degradation, denial, and disprivileges. It is during these eras that just 4 years after President Abraham Lincoln signing the Emancipation Proclamation, that our people as African Americans would endure an entire century following that of, again, being up against all the odds of the day. And so we are very honored that a project like this, the Lost Town Projects, the story map, connects us to not only race, but it connects us to the place, and it connects us to the time. And so again, we ask that you enjoy this rich tapestry of story maps that chronicle the rich history of African American history and culture, legacies of civil rights throughout Anne Arundel County, and the Lost Town Projects.
All right. First of all, I'd like to say I'm honored to be before this body and giving testimony about Shadyside and Columbia Beach and all the wonderful people and experiences that I've had and other people have had, you know. Some things have been kind of sad, you know, but that's just the real world as far as things that, you know, either went on during those times, because that was in the midst of segregation. So as you know, that wasn't pretty, but there were people that did want to reach out and mix and, you know, come along. We had a beach right next to our beach. This Columbia Beach was a black beach, but we had Cedarhurst right next door, which was a white community, and they had a great big billboard up there of what they did not want there. One was no Jews, no Negroes, I can't remember everything that they had, but I mean, it was a big list of, but those were really only ones that really concerned me. So they didn't want us there. We didn't go there. I mean, we had it all down here. We didn't need nothing they had there. Right. You know, as you can see, they come in here.
Right.
Yeah, but Cedarhurst Road, you know, there was a place called Jim's Country Kitchen, and it was a bar and restaurant. Black people couldn't go there. When black people wanted beer or whatever, they go around to a window around the side of it, and they give you whatever you wanted at that window, but you're not going through that front door. If you go through that front door, they try to say that, they call it a drop in. You drop in, that's it. You don't make that mistake. And I'm quite sure somebody did. That's how they got the reputation. But you know, all in all, basically things were peaceful, except late at night you just had to know, you know, where you're going and you know, who you with. You just didn't mingle and wander, you know. And you know, Avalon Shores, where they had the fire department. Black people, they don't even think about wanting to volunteer because these are all volunteer fire departments.
Right.
Don't even think about it. Then of course they had the two segregated elementary schools down in Shadyside. Lula G. Scott was what they named the black school. But later on they had Shadyside Elementary, white, Shadyside Elementary, colored. And that's the way it was. People were, they would come in, white people would come in and hawk their vegetables and fruit, no problem. The ice cream man would come in, you know, they jingling, ain't nobody chasing him out of here. You know, you ring that bell, the Jack and Jill man's here. And so we enjoyed it. Then of course we had the boat races down here, which brought, you know, brought a lot of, you know, white and black folks together. You know.
I loved playing basketball and sports. I played all sports. I played baseball, I played football, but my main thing was basketball. I loved basketball. I would go over on Kerry Whedon's court. We lived across the field, and shovel the courts off in the wintertime with the shovel just so I could shoot basketball. But as far as the basketball, when I got over to the high school, I walked into the coach's office. His name is Tom Albright, and they had gone over to Cole Field House for many years, and they never won a state championship. I sat at his, right down at his desk. I said, Coach, I realize that you all have been over to Cole Field House, but you never won a state championship, and you've been going for years. I said, I'm here to guarantee you, before I leave this high school, you're going to get your first state championship. So he laughed, of course, and we wound up doing that in my junior year. All of my teammates were seniors. Now you remember I told you some of the decisions that you make early in life is going to affect you later in life. Well, I was a junior at that time. All of my guys on the team were seniors. What should I have been? A senior, right? So a lot of things played a part into that. We won that first state championship, and I felt better for the coach than I did for my own self, to be honest with you. Because besides the fact that I know he wanted it, he was just a great guy. I mean, he was like a father to us. You know, he took us under his wing, and you know, we went to basketball camps every summer. We used his car to go back and forth, and it was just he was just a great guy. So I really felt good about being able to help get that first state championship. I was back in '73. And then I got an opportunity to go to work for the state. That was Crownsville Hospital Center. That was back in, I believe that was 75 or so. And I went there as a janitor. And I was always told that no matter what you do in life, you try to be the best at it. So it didn't matter what the job was, I was going to try to be the best at it, and I did that. And I think after about 9 months, the director of the nursing program came to me and she said, I see that you're very good with the patients. How would you like to go to LPN school and we'll pay you to go? I said, that sounds good to me. So I jumped on that and I went to the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene School of Practical Nursing. And did I think it was a year accelerated program. And had an opportunity to work at a lot of different hospitals during the various rotations. So anyway, I went to work at University of Maryland Hospital during one of my rotations. I worked at Crownsville initially, like I said, as a janitor, and then I became what you call, it was a HAF, I think they call it, a health assistant. And then, like I said, I went to the LPN school. I graduated from there and got my license. And I wanted something else that said that, because my specialty was psychiatry. And I wanted something that says psychiatric specialist. And when I went into work at Crownsville, I never felt afraid, even with some of the biggest guys or black belt karate experts, whatever, because I figured if the man upstairs send you to do something, he's going to equip you with everything you need.
At Crownsville, were there any other type of sports that the patients or clients played? Were you ever given an opportunity to show them some of your basketball skills?
Definitely. Yeah, and we would allow some of them to play with us, those that were capable. And they thoroughly enjoyed it because some of those clients, nobody wanted to take them out because, you know, they felt like they were going to run or just do something that they wouldn't be able to handle. So I think they enjoyed the fact that when I came around, I would give you a chance, you know, regardless. You try to run, you know, at that age, I didn't have no problem. I could run you down. But I let them know that if you do that, I said, then that tells me that you don't want to come outside anymore because I'm the only one taking you out, you know, but I didn't have those type problems. And it was just an interesting, like I said, if somebody would have told me coming out of high school that that's what I was going to be doing, I would say, you must be out your mind. I said, that ain't me. But you don't know what you are. When a man calls you to do something, you go with it. You know, some of us live all our lives and never know why we're put down here. But I just felt like I was blessed to be able to know what my purpose in life was, and that was to help people who had a hard time helping themselves.
When I first heard about this project that you're working on, I was excited because Crownsville was a very important part of my life. I spent 38 years there. I went there in 1964 as a seamstress after leaving a fabric store that I'd worked for about 3 or 4 years, but the state was offering me the benefits. So I chose to go there to work with the benefits that they were offering me. Of course, I love what I was doing, the sewing. When I got to Crownsville, I was a little bit reluctant to work there with some of the, what we call at the time, the patients, because of my fear not being knowledgeable of the mental health program. I ended up enjoying every moment that I was there at Crownsville. Working there in the clothing department, we had some of the patients working with us. There was like 10 seamstresses, along with maybe 5 to 10 patients would come in and assist us. They were not permitted to use the sewing machines or the scissors or the knee, but they were did a lot of mending, or they would assist us when we were cutting the garments that we made. A lot of the wearing apparel we made. We made pajamas and gowns, dresses. In fact, we did employees' uniforms. There was 21 pieces on those uniforms. I remember them very well. The employees, when I started, were wearing uniforms. They had a laundry there also, and the laundry did the uniforms for the employees. They would, because the laundry had the facilities to do the starched uniforms there. In fact, the laundry did the clothing and linens for the patients when I started. After about less than 10 years working there as a seamstress, the position of supervisor came. And I took the test and passed and became supervisor of the clothing department, which gave me a title of clothing service manager. Within those 10 years, we no longer had the patients working. I don't know when that stopped, but we no longer had patients working with us. But we still had a staff of about 8 linen service workers and seamstresses. Still making most of the items. And then eventually we went to ready-made items like the dresses and the gowns, and even the staff uniforms. The clothing department supplied the buildings with their linens and window treatments. We did the offices also with flame retardant fabrics we had to have in the areas where the patients were. It wasn't a hard job because we all were there and were loving what we were doing. It was something that, like I said, I enjoyed doing my 38 years there at Crownsville. The patient population, which one of the ladies that you interviewed were talking about. When I started, we had over 2,000 patients. And when I left, and what was it, 2002, may have been 200.
As of January 1st, 1960, was my first day at Crownsville. I worked in an office named Patient Placement. This office took care of the census of the whole hospital. At 1960, it was 3,200 patients. 866 employees. That's including all departments. The departments were nurses service, dietary, motor pool, Campanile building, which was the activity building, and they also had office spaces. Did I say dietary? Okay. And then my office took care of intake and output of patients. That's included convalescent leave, trial visits.
Now, as far as recreation, activities, what was some of the recreational activities that you recall the patients or clients
You mean,
engaged in?
you mean what activities the patient was engaged in?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, they were engaged in a lot of like outdoor sports, bingo, basketball, and we took them on trips. And the ones we took on trips from each area was patients who had met the criteria where they could go off ramps.
Okay.
We would take them to Baltimore, to the park, to the baseball game, the Warriors game. But they were all selected patients who had met the criteria of going off ramps, like group 3 patients.
But I went to Crownsville. Sister Herd Holt got us all jobs at Crownsville, and she put us in all departments. I was in the dietary department in B building, and that's where I started out as a dietary worker 1. And we could work ourselves up to dietary worker 5. And the money was good, and I stayed there. And so after I got to be a dietary worker 5, I went and took the tests to advise myself up a little higher. Then I went to be a food production worker. After I got the position of food production worker, that's working with the cooks and you doing their backup work. And I said, well, if I can do her backup work, I might as well take the cook test. And that's what I did. I took the cook test and passed it. And you could move up from cook 1 and all the way up to cook 3. And after I took the cook test and passed it, I said, well, maybe I need to be a supervisor. I took the supervisor test and I passed it. And after I took the supervisor test and passed it, I went and took a food service manager test. That was my last test. I spent 37 years in the dietary department of Crownsville. And the patients, and the work wasn't hard because during the first time, the patients was working with us. We had patients working in the kitchen. And most of the food we fixed for the patient was fixed from what they raised on the farm and what was brought in. And then my last job was ordering food for the 500 patients for a year. We had, our budget went in July, and we had to turn over records of how much food we would use for a year. And I enjoyed working at Crownsville. It was fun. Everybody was nice. And we, only trouble we had when we send the fried chicken out there, the employees would eat the food and call back to the kitchen. And then if I tell them I counted the food, then they said, that Watkins is something. That she don't cheat down there counting the food like she brought it. But it was nice. My 37 years, I tell it, I'm 81 years old now, and I tell the children now, they say, Mama, if they hadn't closed Crownsville, do you think you would be there? I said, yes, sitting right behind the desk watching y'all. And it was fun. I really enjoyed Crownsville. And in the beginning when I first went there, we wasn't making a whole lot of money. But you know what? That check lasted us from 1-2 weeks to I had money when I got paid the next 2 weeks. And then in the last part of it, we were making money. and they hadn't won enough money to pay your bill. It was great at Crownsville.
Yes, my name is Donald Smith. Been in the Lothian area, Drury, all of my life. I am the 5th child out of 12 of Anthony and Louise Smith. My father grew up in this area also, which was in Drury. Then they moved on Sands Road near Bayard Road. He had seven of them. He was the oldest boy out of 2 boys, and there was 5 girls. Grandfather, Eugene Smith, which is Anthony's father, my grandfather, he owned the farm on Sands Road. And his father, which was Arthur Smith, owned the Drury ballpark and that farm up there. My days up in the ball field, Drury ball field. Youngster up there watching those games. Oh man, we used to have fun. But we had to run the balls, you know. Our family had things to do at the ball field. You know, my older brothers helped with the cooking or helped doing something, and some of them played. Well, I only had 2 of us played. Anthony, my older brother, and I were the only 2 boys to play for Drury. My other 3 brothers, which is David, Samuel, and Calvin, they weren't into sports. But anyway, we all had something to do whenever there was a ball game up there. To step back a little, the Drury started, from which was the story handed to me, started back in the late 40s, early 50s, 1950s, late 1940s. There was a family who had a farm adjacent to my grandfather's farm, which was the Wilsons. I just knew of 2 of their family members, which was Miss Charlie Joe Wilson, and the other brother to him, all I can remember, they called him Shock. And their family owned the land, and they sold it, and they needed some place to play, and my grandfather allowed them to play on his farm. So it's been there late 40s, early 50s. And they even used to have an announcer up there who announced the games. And his name was Mr. Ernest Evans, which was a local gentleman, had a very strong voice, but he announced the games. And I was a kid, I can still remember seeing him sitting up in this little box, I would say. It wasn't sitting on a platform behind home plate announcing the games. And they tell me you could hear his voice a good ways away announcing those games. But he was the one who announced the games there. And I knew of a lot of players who came through there. I don't remember them all. I just remember some of them. There was one guy who I played behind. He was the right fielder, and his name was Richard Smith. No relation to me, but what an excellent ball player he was. He was kind of stocky. You wouldn't think this guy was fast, man. This guy could move. He was real fast. So, and a good hitter. I was fast and not a good hitter, but I was playing behind him. There's no way I was going to be able to take him out of that position. So every now and then I did get to play on the team. I was 16 years old when I started. And after I was drafted into the military, which was 1970, never played for the team again after that. After I came out of the military, I didn't play hardball anymore. I mostly played softball.
Well, my name is Anthony Smith. I'm from right here in Lothian. Yeah, I'm one of the family members. Because Sammy, he was my uncle, you know, the owner of the property. Yep. And like, I played ball here for about 10 years myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what positions did you play?
I was a pitcher.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you were the Tommy Setzger on the other side.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I remember him pretty well. He was a good pitcher, too.
Yeah.
Yes, he
so
was.
what were
Yep.
some of your best games as a pitcher?
Right, exactly.
One memorable game was we was playing at Oaks Picnic. You remember?
Coach Picnic, yes.
Did it every August, last Saturday in August. This particular game, I had Galesville shut out to the ninth inning.
Wow.
Ninth inning, 2 strikes on the batter, 1 more pitch, the game would be over.
Whoa.
And I had my shutout. Last ball, I turned it loose. Frank Parker was the batter for it, and he caught hold of it. Home run up to that ball.
That is awesome.
And they retrieved the ball, had him thrown it at the home plate,
Wow.
but the catcher dropped the ball. I remember that one. Yeah, he dropped
You
the
didn't
ball.
sleep that night, did you?
Yeah, but we won, you know, but
Awesome.
didn't get my shutout.
Awesome.
And that's quite an achievement to shut out Galesville.
Yeah.
Yeah, you pitching some ball there. Yeah.
Serious ball.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That is amazing.
Yep. Frank Parker.
So you said that this field where we're sitting now was not the original field.
No, it wasn't.
That the original field was across the way.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right.
So you think it was probably somewhere in the early 50s?
Yeah, it was the early 50s when they made the transition over here. I don't really know why. Because my great grandfather was the owner of this land.
Oh.
So
And what
Sammy-
was his name?
Mr. Arthur Smith. He was the owner. And that was Sammy's grandfather. So here, I guess he just let him use it, you know, whatever agreement they made.
Yeah.
And so they started playing ball here, and they've been here ever since.
So did Sammy play ball?
Yeah, he played ball way back, early 50s.
Okay. And where did he fit in the family? You being the oldest, where did he?
Sammy, that's my father's brother.
Well, I started playing baseball in '56 when I was in high school. In Calvert County, Owensboro, Maryland. I started out playing shortstop. Then I wanted to be a catcher, so after the years, I graduated. I started catching, back catching, and everything went smooth. During that time when I first started playing, it was black team playing against black team. There wasn't no whites playing with you know, against us.
Right.
But then guys that after it went along started mixing in, blending in. And now, shit, you think, I mean, it just seems just like a family of people. They're all mixed up together.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. And I understand that kind of took place in the 60s when...
Yeah, it was the late 60s.
Right up here. I think it was, but might have been 10, 12 years ago. We was playing Swamp Dogs. So the score was 10-10. Ninth inning, 2 outs. I'm on first base coaching. They got me, I was the last man standing. Took me off first, I got in the lineup, got at the plate. He threw 2 strikes on me. Down in the dirt, I swung at both of them. I stepped out. I told him, put it right here. Y'all never did it. Pow! That off 2 second base, scored that run from second to home. 11-10, we won the game. Went on to the playoff and won the championship after that.
Whoa.
That's right.
What year was that?
I can't call what year it is. It's been a long time. I know it's been about 10, 15 years ago. But I
On
tell you
this
one
field,
thing.
were you playing for jury then, or you were playing for another
I
team?
was playing with Julie.
Jury. Okay, got it.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
I know a lot of stuff now. Don't forget, I've been around a long time.
I was assigned to Friendship Elementary School, and that was in June of 1957. We got out of college before elementary schools dismissed, which gave us an opportunity to go down to the schools that we had been assigned to. So I didn't drive, so I can't remember how I got down there, but I remember going down. And when I got down there, all of the children were on the playground. And the principal was out there, and her name was Dorothy Taylor, and she was from the Eastern Shore. And she was trying to get them to use their bodies to write the word friendship. And she kept having them to just practice and practice. And I walked up to her. She could never get them turned around. The word was always upside down. And I walked up to her and I said to her, "Do you mind if I help?" And she said, "Indeed, I don't mind if you can get them turned around." So thanks be to God, I got them turned around, and they wrote with their bodies the words Friendship School. That was their play day and initial graduation, and that introduced me to my school. At first, I was assigned in September to grades 2 and 3. We only had 4 rooms, so we had 4 teachers. I taught the 1st and 2nd grade. They were the best boys and girls that anybody could ask for. Not only were they good students, but along with what they had been taught at home, they were the most mannerly children that I had ever taught. Since I hadn't taught in it before, I could say that. But they reminded me, when I went to Africa, I said to them, "You remind me of the first class that I had," because the children there were so mannerly and so respectful of adults and each other. And when I was in elementary school, the teacher could leave the room and leave a student in charge. And the children had respect for that student who was in charge. This was the same situation at Friendship, and this was the same situation in Africa. I was at Friendship for 10 years, from 1957 to 1966. And during that time, the latter part of my career there, my time there, integration came about. Well, actually, it was passed in 1954 when I was in college, but the law was not enforced. And Miss Sarah V. Jones would come around and say about what can we do to speed it up? And my thought was this: enforce the law. If you enforce the law, all of us will come out the stall at the same time and we will have an equal chance. But we didn't do that. We waited in this county until 1966.
My name is Fred Booz. I am a direct descendant of my family from Galesville, Maryland. I currently reside in Churchton, Maryland, a few miles from here. My fondest memories of my childhood are from Galesville. which is where my mother and father both grew up. My father, the Reverend Melvin Booth Sr., or Melvin, Melvin Booth as he was called back in the day, pretty much ran this edifice here that we call the Galesville Community Center back in the early to late 60s into the late 80s as a recreation and parks playground director. My dad, a retired teacher, educator, always wanted to be around kids. It always seems as though we were always around somebody's kids all of our lives. Living in Galesville, there wasn't much to do. We played amongst each other. We're all family. My dad's story is pretty unique around here. Everybody that knows my dad knows that he would do anything to keep the kids occupied in the community. Thus, him getting into, after school was out, he picked up the job of being a recreation and park camp director, or as we used to call it back in the day, it was called playground. My dad, roughly, I'm going to say, probably did that for the better part of 30 plus years. He loved doing it. He would get up early, get stuff together to take to this building to have the playground up and running by the time 9 o'clock came and the kids got here ready to enjoy themselves for about 4 or 5 hours of just arts and crafts, games, and the like. As a kid, my brother and I, we would attend the camp. I want to say my first experience as a camp kid was at about 8 or 9 years old, and the camp was pretty much all Galesville kids, African American kids. Not that the camp was segregated. It was only that the only kids that were in this part of Galesville were the black kids. So my dad didn't turn anybody away, that's for sure. He would take whoever would come here to come to camp, whether they had money to pay, their parents had money to pay or not. My dad made sure that they got the camp experience.
Melvin Booth Sr., Box 183, Churchton, Maryland, 20733. My birth date is 9/12/30. I was born in Galesville. Then I directed the playground up there for 25 years for the county recreation department in the summer. And I taught basic adult education right up at the, right when you go out, it's a old, call it the community center. Basic, like just.
So it wasn't GED. This was.
Yes, it was like
GED.
for GED, but we didn't give the GEDs. But it was like a beginning. Yeah, those who had been to like 4th, 5th grade, didn't go any further. They would. Some of the parents, Right. So I've done quite a bit.
Yeah.
For the building of Galesville.
I want to talk about my hot sauce career. Well, it just started back in 1963, I guess. 1963. I guess I was about 10 years old. And a guy by the name of Baldy Turner, he lived up, you could run through the pathway and get to his house, He used to gather us up and take us all down to the field. We young kids, give each one of us a hoe, just so we can hold the grass out the field, showing us maintenance, showing how to keep maintenance on the field. So like on Sunday, we come to the ball game, have a good time. Everybody get in line because everybody want to run balls. We run ball, 10 years old, run balls. We ran balls all day, 9 innings, run ball, happy as a lark, run balls. run down through the woods, duck on behind, look on trash can, wherever the ball falls, you try to get the ball. And the main thing was that after the game, you run on down, you young, you run on down here because they always had fish fry down here, Jack. You know what I'm saying? You laid over there, be laid out back here, those fish be popping out the skillet over there, man, over there. We had a good time. It was a good time. It was a good time, man. Because you met a lot of people, just a lot of families started, a lot of relationships started. You met all kinds of people. People came from all over. And then back in 1973, I'm getting a little older now. That sound good to you? I joined the Hot Sox then. I became a Hot Sox player, And my coach, he was John Maker. He was the coach, But he was all good, I was about 19, maybe 19 years old, still young, running crazy, running wild, but it's all good though. You do those kind of things, you know what I'm saying? And then played a few years for him and had a good time, traveling different areas all over, but let me go a little further. And then later on in life, a guy by the name of Raymond Fountain, he took over the team. He became a part of it. He became the Hot Sox coach. I played for him for a few years. And he was also, one of the blacks on the Chesapeake Bay. He worked out on the water. He was like a fisherman, oysterman, crabman, all that kind of stuff. But he was he was like a role model to us, like a father figure, because my father, he passed away when I was 7 years old. This is very touching now. I always get to that point where, it's in my heart. I just, I think about it today, and it just touched me so bad. But I like to say that my biggest role model is my brother Charles Foote. They call him Teddy Boy. Everybody knew him by Teddy Boy. He was a Hot Sox baseball player. He was one of the best players. If anybody in the family should have been in the pros, should have been him. Because if you see him today, if he was walking around here today, he would have a baseball glove or something playing something with him. Because that was him. That was a part of him. That's how he rolled. And then he was an all-state wrestler back in the day. Yeah. But I had a plenty of role models because it was a lot of older ball players that you respect them, and you just watched them and you just kind of did a lot of things they did.
Anyway, so then I opened a beauty shop, and I started out with Arizona managers, and it's the first black licensed beauty shop in Southern Anne Arundel County. Yeah, and then some of my I had a few that still came to Galesville for a while until they, I had clients from all over, from down there on the Galesville Shady Side, Church and all of those, Mill Swamp, it's called Mill Swamp then, and let me see how to think, 600 clients. And that's why I wanted to do more. If I was during the time, we just had begin to get knowledge about who we were, and and I was one of the first ones, started trying to do something. They used to take their kids in this area by bus up to New York to work. Yes, they did. I remember that, but I didn't go. I was prepping myself for what I was going to do, and the men used to go to Jersey. Isn't that terrible? We can get a job anywhere. I wish Betty had came, because she probably know more about that than I do. Of course, she's a few years younger than me. I said, well, Betty, go on and tell some of the stuff, but don't tell the day you got mad and went home. And I called her back and told her she had 2 clients. She needs to come back. She got we laugh at that today. They used to get mad with me, and I was the best boss.
My name is Betty Turner. I was born and raised here in Galesville. In 56, I think it was, I went to Wild Age Base High School, graduated in 1960. Came out of school, and I always wanted to be a cosmetologist. And we had one black salon in Galesville, and the owner was Ellen Jane Watkins. And I went in her beauty shop, and I worked for up until September, from June to September. And the reason why I left was because she was getting 60% and I was getting 40%. And I always loved clothes, but I always loved shoes the best. And I told her, I said, Auntie, I can't buy shoes with this. So she said, well, Betty, you know, you keep working and you will get more customers and you'll make more money. I said, okay. I said, well, you know what? The oyster house opened up in September and I'm going to shuck oysters. And she said, oh, okay. So one day I actually left without telling her. And she called me and said, Betty, you have customers waiting for you. And I said, well, I guess you have to do their hair because I'm not coming back.
I didn't went through the real slavery like some people went through, but I had a touch of it. I had a touch of it when you went down to the top side, you had to go around to the side window to get what you want, still going into the door. And that's why I don't go in top side too much today. Or the kind of, I think it's a black person running the top side, but I still think about what I had to do back in that time. And I'm still thinking about how you can get better in life, learn from life what went on in your life. And I've been very important that I'm trying to better myself every day. Every time I do something wrong, I try to make a better of the wrong that I did. And I tell my children the same thing. Yeah, I had the opportunity of meeting Dr. Martin Luther King in Washington, D.C. I had opportunity to go to the conference. And I went to the church that morning around 9 o'clock. You know, ain't too many people when you go to conference, you know, ain't too many people there early in the morning around 9 o'clock. But I went there that morning because I always go early because I want to get a parking place. And I went in that morning and I wondered what's going on, why all these people, no parking place. And I didn't know who he was. But I heard that man speak from the, all I did is got inside the door. And that's all I had to do. This man was preaching, and Lord, I never heard nothing like that in my life. I could feel it down in my soul that he was preaching from deep. He was a young man, and I was a young man at that time too, so I figured that he must have been somewhere around my age, you know. But the church was bishop and everybody was there that morning. And I enjoyed him. And today, you know, I've been down to his church, and I haven't the opportunity to see him again, but I'm so glad. You know, you can listen at what other people say somebody else is, and you can see it for yourself. It's two different things. When you see something for yourself, you know where you came from. Somebody else tell you don't know whether it's right or not. Most of you think it's right, but it don't have to be right. But when you see something for yourself, and when the opportunity, he made my day. He spoke, and that's the first time I heard him preach. And the last time I heard him preach in person. But I'd say to my man, he really did something to my life. I wonder how could he live and all that he'd been through and still didn't believe in violence because where they treat him. And he didn't believe in violence because violence don't get you credit for nothing.
And every child, regardless of their race, if they lived in Mayo, first job was Beverly Beach. Beverly Beach. First job. Go down Beverly Beach.
Was that considered a segregated beach?
It was a segregated beach. There wasn't nothing down there. Wasn't nothing down there. That big sign up there saying, well, not a segregated beach. White only. Nothing else. Gentile only. We could only go down there and work. We did everything. But old man Cobb, Edgar Ray Cobb, closed the beach because he didn't want black people in the water with his wife. That was the truth. But we put down the sea nettle net, he put down a net. Well, I don't know, I can't explain how big it was. It made it out of wire. We put down slats, and then we put the wire down, and then we put down slats on top of it to hold it together. We was in that water every day. Same water, but we couldn't go on. We put down scows that they used to lay on to sunbathe. We took them up, we kept them mended, the hole get in it, we put it down, fix it, but we could not. He didn't want us in the same water with his wife. So he closed it up. But by then, they had bought another beach. Right down the shore from it was a Ford beach named Ford. Man called them bought that. He bought that. Same thing. So he closed that one too. Didn't want no black person in the water with his wife. Closed both beaches. Yep.
Where did the black people go?
Cards Beach, Sparrows Beach. That was over near Annapolis. Cards Beach, Sparrows Beach. We went to those places for beach purpose.
And you had slot machines at Mayo Beach too, didn't you? Slot machines.
Yeah, they had slot machines. They at both those beaches that he closed up, they used to have slot machines, but it was only 5 cent slot machines. You know, nothing like we got now, quarter, nickel, not. All they had was nickels. And we used to carry nickels from Beverly Beach, had an upstairs to it. That way they did all the business. And we'd carry them as much as 2 people could carry in a foot tub of nickels. So you took your nickels up, and I was coming down. You was going to get a handful of nickels. Go on down steps. He lost so many nickels. We carried up the nickels.
Wow.
And then he had pavilions that he used to rent off so people could have parties. And he used to serve kegs of draft beer. Took that too. He sent us over to catch a draft. Catch a draft beer to such and such. Okay. Well then, you don't have to do it now. You had to take a rod and put it down in the keg. You had to know how to do it because it would blow back out. So we go in and tap him a keg. He might got a half a keg. Who the hell knows? Because whatever we took back out of it, we carried it back to the coal pot, take another one, kept that song. You know, okay, girl.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing. He never bought no hot dog. Go over and take some out of each box till we get a box. Put the top back on. He didn't know what the hell was in it. He come in and get somebody else get some hot dogs. They're gonna cook them anyway at the bar. They didn't care damn whether it was half a box, 3/4 box. Didn't care. We ate. I mean, we robbed him. We did rob him. Believe me, we robbed him.
So I've become affiliated with the Ralph Bunche Community Center because the school is so special to us. At the time I started Ralph Bunche Elementary School, we had just moved to the community a few years before, and we lived at the end of Millswamp Road, nearest Route 2. And I can remember as a 6-year-old in the first grade having to walk from up on the Hardesty Hill, we called it, all the way down to Ralph Bunche. But you know, it was a different time, different era. I wasn't afraid. But in the winter, we had some bad winters. Nothing compared to these winters. I mean, our winters were really bad then. And I can remember my mother standing on the porch, holding one of my siblings, and just looking at me. And I kept wondering, why is she looking at me? But I mean, the snow was probably up to here, and I had a long way to walk. And there were other buses passing us by because, you know, schools were segregated. And here's this little 6-year-old girl walking. So she convinced Bates High School was in existence then, so she convinced the school board to pick me up with the high school kids. By that time, my brother, who was Charles, was walking with me, so she convinced them to pick me up so that I wouldn't have so far to walk. She must have been awfully worried, but you know, my mother's deceased, and it's just hitting me how worried she must have been. But you know, she was a fighter, and she was determined that her kids were not going to get to school tired and cold and whatever. But that was my experience. Other people had other experiences, but Ralph Bunche was a wonderful place to go. And I think that's where I get my love for writing and reading. A lot of emphasis was put on math, writing, and reading. And math was my weak spot, but they realized what our weak spots were, and they worked with us on those weak spots. But it just, my natural ability flowed when it came to writing and reading. And I had some wonderful teachers who really pushed me and got the most out of me.
Good afternoon. My name is Lindra Pratt Marshall. I am from the Lothian community. In the 1950s, African Americans were forbidden to have children in Anne Arundel County Hospital. So our parents had to go to Washington, D.C., where I was born at Freedman's Hospital. But I was raised here in the Lothian community. I grew up on Solomon's Island Road, which is now called Old Solomon's Island Road. And as my family was growing, my parents was looking for a much larger home, so they decided to build a home in Deal. Between that time, we lived at the Rosenwald School No. 2, which is now the Pratt family homestead. Growing up in Lothian, I got to learn a lot about the community. When the community was first established, it was called Lebanon, God's country. And then the village decided they wanted to change the name to the Ark Village. And shortly after that, it was changed to the Ark. And now it's just considered Mount Zion, which sits on Ark Road. Besides the Mount Zion United Methodist Church, also in the community, you have various African American tour stops. And one would be the Up Shop. The Up Shop was a general store that my great-grandmother, my paternal great-grandmother, Cornelia Brown Johnson Randall Cunningham, was the owner of. And the Up Shop was a place where the community could come, and not only in the daytime it was a general store, and in the evenings it would turn to a juke joint, especially on Saturdays. And so many of our relatives have shared that there was a bell that used to sit on the top of the hill. And I guess somewhere in the evening time, maybe around 4 or 5 o'clock, someone would ring that bell to let the community know that the juke joint was open. And so they talk about the good food that our great-grandmother would cook and prepare and have it ready for people. And they also, the men mainly talked about the conversations they used to have under a tree. Then there was an Elks Club. Well, I guess the Elks Club probably closed prior to my birth because I only remember stories about it, but my Uncle Sam pointed into the direction where the Elks Club used to be. There was also another general store called the Thomas General Store, and that store was owned by the Thomas family, who's also related to my family. And then there was Thomas Bus Company. Thank God for Thomas Bus Company, because our parents' generation had to walk to school, but my generation got to ride the school bus. And boy, let me tell you, it didn't matter what the weather was like, because we even went to school when the snow was higher than my height at that age. There was also an old post office, which is now demolished. And then in the 1950s, after the Rosenwald schools were closed, a new school was built, and that was also called Lothian Elementary School. That was a segregated school. And unfortunately, in 1966, when schools were desegregated, in my 5th grade year, passing to the 6th grade, was heartbreak for me because I had to leave not only the school, but I left my family, my friends, and had to go to a land I knew nothing of.
Hello, my name is Tammy Carroll Hall, and I am a descendant of William E. Step Pratt and Cornelia Johnson Pratt. We are the grandkids of Cornelia Johnson also. I grew up here in this community and I've never left. This has been home all the time for me. I grew up here in this church as a little girl, and I'm still here. I've never ventured out into other churches, but I have supported them.
Let's take a tour. We're now going to enter the Mount Zion Memorial Chapel. Here we have a photo of Mount Zion Church when it was first built in 1874. This is what it looked like as I was growing up. This is all I knew. These are the stained glass windows that are still here, and we still have them in the church of today. The steeple there was also there, but it had a bell on the inside, and they would ring the bell when it was time for church. Here's where we stand here in the midst of the middle of the altar of the church, where you have the pulpits where the pastors used to stand when they were talking. Here is the seating where we had to look forward to see whomever we had there. Here on the right, we have the choir loft where the senior choir and the men's chorus would stand every Sunday and sing their songs. Over here on the left, again, we have a choir loft where we had the inspirational choir, which was called the junior choir back then, and the chirps, which are now called the gospeliers. And here we have the original piano, in which we still have today, over in the Thomas Educational Building down the hall, which is our fellowship hall. These are some of our former pastors that we've had here at Mount Zion. There is Reverend Durham, Reverend Hall, then Pastor Evans, Pastor Collins, and later the Pastor Rufus Abernathy, which left here and went to Annapolis. Here on this wall, we have former pastors that were here as I grew up. We have Reverend Rufus Abernathy, the Reverend George A. Stansberry, and which I was his secretary when he was here. Then we have the Reverend O. St. Clair Franklin, who came in with a spirit, and when you left, you had a spirit with you. Then we have Reverend John Coursey, who was here, and he was part of a two-part charge with Mount Zion and Adams. And Reverend Douglas Logan. Here we have the gloves and the pen of our grandfather, William E. Step Pratt, for the ushers, where he always stood at the back door quietly helping others.
Thank you, Tammy, for this wonderful tour of the rich history of African American families here at Mount Zion United Methodist Church.
And this is where our heritage began, with our great-great-grandparents, our great-grandparents, our grandparents, and our parents, and now us. We're now in the cemetery of Mount Zion United Methodist Church.
Mount Zion United Methodist Cemetery is located on the south side of Ark Road. It is one of the oldest African American cemeteries in the Lothian area. It is also located behind the Mount Zion United Methodist Church and both Lothian Rosenwald schoolhouses, number 1 and number 2. Many of those interred here are our relatives on both sides of the family, both maternal and paternal. Our great-great-grandparents, great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, siblings, and many other relatives and friends. Some grave sites dates back to the mid-1800s, and as to date, many family members are still being interred here at the cemetery. Interred in the cemetery are many notables and some really fascinating individuals, such as those that served in the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and the Vietnam War.
So tell us about River Bend. What was it? What did it look like on the inside, the outside? Who were the people, some of the artists that came?
Oh, the artists, I had everybody with James Brown. I had Magazine, Gladys Knight and the Pips. I had Bobby Blue Bland. I had everybody that I could get on the phone. I started off with Bobby Blue Bland, I think. He used to be at Carr's Beach, see. And when I got to Magazine Brown, one of them artists, and I had a guy you called Benny Blake or something. He was a DJ, and he started me off with the music. And this artist came in. She told me, said she was on break. And she said to me, I was in the little office I had down there, and she said, sit down. I sat down, and she said, see that DJ you got there? I said, yes. You don't need him. She said, you don't need him. That's a waste of money for you. Besides, it won't cost you no more money if you give me 4 o'clock in the evening than to do 10 o'clock at night. From 10 to 2, from 2, cost you no money, so you don't need him. And she gave me this number to call, and I'd call that number and ask them, do they have anything for one night stand coming this way?
So what about Hobby Adams? Did he ever come down?
Hobby Adams started the disco.
Okay.
Hobby Adams came to the riverbed just to socialize, I guess. And he came in, and we were sitting down talking, and he said, why don't you have a disco? I said, never had one. Don't know how to have one. He said, I do. And that's what's called the disco, Hobby Adams. Yep.
And what did the disco consist of?
Playing records. That's all you was, play records and dance. And all my children, all 3 of my children, when I had my first son, he put that on air. Second girl, he put the next child girl, he put that on air. He did everything.
So the people that came to Riverbend, was that most of the local people that?
Oh, not all of them, no. Most of them was from other places. They would go to Waldorf, or people come from Waldorf. I would say, that wasn't all local.
PG County?
Okay. Different counties, yes. Prince George, Calvert.
Annapolis.
Annapolis. They came all over. And I sold ribs, barbecue ribs out back.
Fish fries, yeah.
Most of the stuff then we had a cook, Miss Julia, I forget her name, she used to cook for them. And you know what? She made some giblet stew.
What can you tell me about Riverbend and the barbershop?
Okay, Riverbend was a place where people come from all over to come for dances and for affairs like having a motorcycle club there, get together there, and having cookouts, and then they turned it into a church. Church had cookouts and a fair.
Right.
Turned it to an antique place.
That's what it is now. Okay.
Okay, no, it was before that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, before that, and now they turned into it. It was a place where you can go get food for people. Can get food. Now they turn it back into a antique place.
Okay. Okay. Now, what can you tell me about Daddy?
His name was Earl, and he always liked the song "The Duke of Earl." I'm the Duke of Earl.
Yeah.
He liked his trucks. And he liked his fast motorcycles.
Yeah, and
fast cars.
Yes. People always had a name for him.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how many names did he have? So it was Backstabber.
Backstabber, Crip, and I think Theodore Gross called him Dude sometime.
Wow. So evidently your grandparents had Riverbend first?
Right.
Yes. Yep.
And then he took over.
After they passed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Remember his other brother, Paul. He had a brother named Paul. They both was partners, you know.
Oh, okay. Paul was a partner.
Yeah, they, you know, both their parents' buildings had to, you know, work together on it. You know what I'm saying? Which he just deceased a couple weeks ago.
My father's favorite saying, when something happened, he always would say, "Only the strong could survive."
So, as a little girl, was Riverbend still open? Do you remember seeing any movement?
Yes, as I was growing up, yes, they had dances going on down there, and they had clubs, so they had car shows and stuff down there also, because they'd be parked all back here in the field also. Yeah.
So the motorcycle club, so what they do, like fundraisers and stuff like that?
They had cookouts, they had meetings, and they did have fundraisers and cabarets, dances and stuff like that. They had and cookouts. Yeah.
Now I understand that there used to be table and chairs outside.
Yeah, well, they had added on. They had a grill. So they would sell dinners, and people would come and get dinners. They would grill ribs, hamburgers, and hot dogs on the grill, and people would come down there. And Riverbend, before it was painted white, it was pink. It was a pink building. It was a pink building.